is a podcast about all things holistic health and self-discovery with me, Ask Elizabeth, counsellor, health advocate and fundraiser. Join me as we get to know these guests and learn about how they implement health, well-being and self-care practices into their lives. Welcome to Unearthing Wellbeing with Ask Elizabeth, where our greatest wealth is health. Hey everyone, and welcome to episode 16 of Unearthing Wellbeing. This week, I was honoured to have Winter Olympian and health and wellness expert Steph Prem join me. Steph talked me through her journey and why she has accepted the rewrite, including her experience facing one of her extreme lows, breaking her back snowboarding, to now being the founder of the unique Studio PP Pilates training method. You'll be on the edge of your seat listening to this episode, and so moved seeing how Steph's journey has come full circle. I will now let you take a listen. Here is Steph. Hi Steph, thank you so much for coming on to Unearthing Wellbeing. Welcome. How are you?
Thank you so much for having me. It's a joy to be here.
I have watched your journey for a few years now, and I'm so excited to finally have you on. Honestly, the pleasure is mine. So,
thank you. That's too kind. No, I'm really excited to be here. So thank you for choosing me.
You're welcome. So tell us a little bit about yourself for those who don't know you or those who know your story. Tell us a little bit more.
Well, my name's Steph Prem. I'm a former Winter Olympian these days, so former professional athlete that has sort of transferred my way into the health and wellness industry these days. I work as a motivational speaker, as a personal trainer, as a wellness coach, and do a lot of work in the corporate health space these days. So my background was professional snowboarding, which is, a little funny coming out of Australia. It's kind of like being on the Jamaican bobsled team. These days I am heavily focused, as opposed to being heavily focused on your own health and well-being as a professional athlete, I'm very much focused on the high performance and health and well-being of others these days.
Amazing. And you're in Victoria, which is amazing, but you've also got that online option for those who are from other states or other countries.
Yeah, it's something we really had to look at during COVID. I'd already worked with a lot of my clients sort of interstate or internationally with business and with travel, but that was more the individual coaching work. So to take sort of Studio PP, my business, and health and wellness studio, from being, a space where you come physically to now being an online space was a big transition, but a really wonderful one, impactful one, and something I'm really enjoying.
Oh, for sure. And I think it's a learning curve for all of us, like going through 2020 just in general. But I think we've all gained some insight and expertise into it. So, yeah.
I think so. I think, dealing with change or loss is an inevitable part of life, especially in this sort of uncertain, world or environment that we find ourselves living in at the moment. And I know, myself included, but a lot of my clients are experiencing, varying degrees of setbacks and worry. So it's like you said, we're all learning. There's no rule book. We're all in this together. So it's about, I think, a bit of recalibration and working out what and who is important and putting our best foot forward for 2021.
Yes. We can only hope for the best. Sorry.
Yes. We've experienced a little bit of the worst, I think, last year for a lot of people, and but I think there is very much light at the end of the tunnel, and there's a lot we can focus on and a lot we can do to stay our healthiest and happiest selves coming into this sort of new environment.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And speaking of which, you've touched upon this briefly, but tell us about your snowboarding career, well, prior to starting Studio PP.
Yeah, so it seems it's funny. It seems a million years ago for me. I retired, sort of celebrated my 10-year anniversary since retiring from sport recently, but it's still very close to my heart and taught me a lot in life. So I was on the Australian Winter Olympic team and competed at the 2010 Winter Olympics.
Amazing.
And I was the only female to qualify in 2010, so it was very exciting. And border cross, the sport that I compete in, or snowboard cross as it's known as these days, is the most watched sport at the Winter Olympics now. But when I competed, it was the first time it had been debuted at the Olympics, so it was a very new sport. And snowboard cross is that sport that's kind of like an obstacle course on snow. There's jumps, bumps, turns, berms. It's a speed event, but there's also sort of the freestyle element. So I really do think it's a sport that brings together, some of the best riders in the world, because you have to be such a kind of versatile rider to take on a border cross course. It's a fantastic spectator sport, probably hence why it's the most watched event, but very frightening if you're one of the athletes, but also a great sort of outlet for my white line fever for a huge part of my career. So it was, I was a professional athlete, snowboarder for about 12 years. I missed qualifying for the 2006 Winter Olympics and then I came back and spent another 4 years of my life trying to get to 2010. So certainly a career highlight. But really it was those sort of 10 years that sort of being a professional athlete and working at that level and sort of trying to qualify for that level of, or the pinnacle, I guess, of sport, which is the Olympic Games, was what really, I guess, taught me the most.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And you were the only female to represent Australia at the time?
In the border cross, in the snowboard cross, I was the only female to qualify from Australia. So it was a really amazing time of life. I mean, the Olympics is a really overwhelming but exciting experience. It's kind of like, the Disneyland for athletes, really. It's the promised land.
That's fantastic. And like the fact that you were able to qualify is just something else. Like, how did you feel actually finding out that you were going to the Olympics?
Yeah, it's funny you should ask, because I had missed out on 2006. There's always that kind of that gut feeling that you might not make it again. And to qualify for an Olympics is challenging. You have to be top 22 in the world, or what my qualifying numbers back then where you had to be top 22 in the world. So coming from Australia, I'm not making excuses by no means, but it's tricky when we only really have a winter 3 months of the year, if we're lucky. So I did sort of 11 back-to-back winters to qualify for, one Olympics, which is huge. But, I never forget the day I received the official letter that you get sent in the mail telling you that you've qualified for the Olympics, and I still have it framed at home. And if I'm ever having a bad day, or I think I can't achieve something, or get through something, I've got this frame being like, congratulations, you've qualified for the Olympics. And I'm like, you know what, anything is possible. It's relieving, because I think people don't realize that because it's a 4-year cycle, the Olympics. You are constantly working on your points and trying to get the right amount of points to qualify for an Olympics. And it's hard work. You have to get consistent results over those years. You can't just win a couple of races and hope that you're going to make it through. So you have to be, you have to consistently have good results over time to then qualify. And you only find out 4 to 6 weeks prior to the Olympics if you've qualified or not.
Wow.
So you work your ass Yeah, you work your ass off for 4 years. And of course, you understand your own ranking, you understand where you're sitting in the world. And we obviously know a lot of the other athletes and competitors, so you have an idea. But there's still a little bit of discretion from your country, and depending on how many people from your country qualify for the Olympics. So there's always that element of surprise. So to get the letter, to have it printed was such a big ordeal. So that's why having that kind of frame for me is a big deal.
Oh, of course. And that's something that you can always look back to, like that you were at the Olympics. Like, that's amazing. You should be so proud of yourself.
Yeah, I mean, for me at the time, I didn't get the result that I wanted to get at the Olympics. So it was at the time very heartbreaking. But I mean, fast forward, 10 years now, it's still one of the greatest achievements of my life. It was still one of the most wonderful times of my life. And I don't by no means regret my result or my time spent. It's just something that I really am grateful for these days.
Yeah, for sure. Did you want to tell us a little bit more about the experience of the Olympics?
So I had a crash in the second round of the Olympics, which took me. I was sitting in 11th place after the first run, and I really wanted a top 10 result. That's what I was going for coming into the Olympics. So I was, so close I could taste it, and I came into that second qualifying run and gave it everything I had, and I was having a much better run and had a lot more speed under my feet and really went for it. And about 3 turns before the finish line, I had a crash, and it dropped my ranking down. I broke a couple of ribs, but I was able to get up and get back down to the bottom of the course and look up to the scoreboard, and I sort of went from 11th, so I went 12th, 13th, 14th. And you need to be in top 16 to get through to the next round at the Olympics. And then there's only a couple more girls to come through, and a few girls came through, and I watched myself go from 14th to 15th, 16th, 17th,
No.
and missed out on the next round of the Olympics by about 0.07 of a second, which was heartbreaking at the time. So a lot of people don't realize the Olympics sits in the middle of the season. So it's not the finale. It's not the end of the season. You've still got World Cup finals. Yeah. So for me, coming off the back of the Olympics not getting the result that I really wanted, World Cup finals was a big deal for me. And I was a bit battered and had a few broken ribs, and a bit of whiplash from the games, but I sort of was still pretty eager to get that top 10 result. So I went into World Cup finals pretty hot. My coach and a few others had said to me, you might be a bit burnt out, you're a bit injured, do you think you should sit this one out? But I was determined, adamant that I wanted to finish the season strong. And just for myself, I wanted to know that I could put in a good run, that I knew I could do. But at the end of the day, I feel like I was still trying to prove something to everyone else, which is never a great place to operate from. But we know that now. But unfortunately, the World Cup finals course was quite treacherous, similar to the Olympic Games. Because it was Olympic season, they were building our courses bigger and better. The boys and the girls all race on the same courses. So it was quite treacherous. We had this jump before the finish line that my coach had said, please don't hit this jump unless you know you've got the speed. And I'd seen a lot of girls and boys hurting themselves on this particular jump all day. So I was a little bit nervous, but coming into the last run before the finals in the afternoon, I sort of thought, well, it's now or never. And my coach was like, as long as you know you have the speed, go for it. But if you don't have the speed, do not hit this jump. And I certainly didn't have it in the training runs before, but in this last training run, I kind of went for it. And because so many people had been running through the course now, it was running a lot faster. So I thought, I don't want to be hitting it later in the day in the finals when I've got, 4 other girls competing with me, because that's how border cross is. It's you're all at the same time. Anyway, I came around the last turn. I definitely had a lot more speed. I thought it's now or never. But what I didn't sort of take into account was that we'd all been pulling off this jump all morning, which had sort of left the best way to describe it would be a big dint in the course, which is fine. And I'd like to believe we're all, strong enough to handle the suspension of hitting a little bump in the road. But unfortunately, when you're about to hit a jump, you need all the speed you can get. So the bump, really, Exactly. Slowed me right down, took the speed from out under my feet, but mentally I'd already committed to hitting the jump. So I went, oh, well, you know what? Shit, I'm just going to go for it. And I literally came off the jump. If you imagine like a skateboard ramp or a, big wedge, what you see is like a jump, same thing on a snowboard. You come up off the jump, so it's like a big wedge, but then there's always a sweet spot. So you need to clear a certain amount of distance in the air before you land, ideally on your feet. And I came round the last turn and came off this jump. And the minute my board left the jump and was in the air, I knew I was in trouble. And I'd never really had an experience like that before, because although it's an X Games sport, although it's an extreme sport, although we're traveling at 60, 70 kilometers an hour, it's still calculated to a point. And I'd done it numerous times before. So to have that feeling coming into the air and being like, oh shit, like I'm in a lot of trouble here. And I can joke about it now, but if you're in the air and you've got enough time to think, oh, I'm in trouble, you've been in the air for way too long. And at that point, it's just about working out how you're going to land and not kill yourself. So, at the risk of going into too much detail, I came off the jump in the air. I knew I was in trouble. I sat right back, and the impact, I came up way short of the transition, which a transition is on a hill. So it would normally help you roll out of the accident or roll out of a crash. But I landed on flat. So I literally came off the jump, missed the transition, just came in the air, lost speed. And my physio explains it like falling out of a first floor building to concrete.
Oh my God.
And the left-hand side of my body sort of took most of the impact. And I fractured my spine in 3 places. I did some severe damage to my pelvis. I did severe spinal whiplash. Obviously, the impact hitting the flat did, quite horrendous spinal and upper cervical damage, not to mention I broke another 3 ribs. I dislocated my hip, tore my hamstring. It was just the entire left-hand side of my body took all of the impact.
Wow.
So that was that, and that was really the last professional run of my athletic career. That went on to be a 5-year rehabilitation journey. It took a lot longer to come back from than I ever thought it would be. I'd done ankle injuries, I'd broken shoulders before, I'd done knee injuries. I was an extreme sportswoman, so we're used to hurting ourselves. But a back injury, for anyone that suffers from chronic pain or back pain, I sympathize with you. It's just something that just takes time, and it takes so much rehabilitation, and it's not something you can rush. And it was a really, really big learning curve for me in terms of not just physical management, but mental management coming back, I guess, from something like that.
Oh, absolutely. Like I see my dad, years ago now, he had a workplace accident, and now he's got bulging discs and everything else, you name it, like, so debilitating pain. So I'm thinking of how he was feeling, but obviously 1,000 times worse in your scenario. And my heart goes out to you. Like, for anyone going through those experiences, that must have been so hard. And because you saw it coming as well, like,
oh, I could never have seen what would the result of that was going to be, but I definitely knew I was in trouble. And I empathize with your father as well. It's, but everyone's pain or everyone's injuries or response to pain is, it's individual, but it's also relevant. Or relevant to them. So no one's is worse than anyone else's. I do a lot of chronic pain management with clients these days. It's a really, really challenging time in life to manage chronic pain and manage injuries. So I learned a lot through that injury.
Yeah, for sure. Like going through those, correct me if I'm wrong, like your lowest points, going through that, you can only, and being able to overcome it, you can only become more resilient and perseverant, like in just life in general. And now seeing how far you've come, like you've got show PP to show for it. Like, yes, you said it was 5 years of struggle, rehabilitation and stuff, but you should be so proud of yourself.
Oh, thank you. It's, well, you're not wrong. I definitely hit my lowest point after that injury and realizing I wasn't going to be able to come back for sport. So for me, the rehab was hard and it was very challenging and the pain was shit. But for me, it was not being able to come back and compete again, which I struggled with, I think, the most. Yeah. And that exacerbated everything else. The two weren't helping each other. So no, thank you so much. It's definitely been a long and hard journey. But again, and same thing I say to my clients also is like, but what's the other choice?
Yeah.
I could make a strong choice. I was 24 when I when I had the accident. So, between 25, 26, 27, I had a lot of work to do, coming into my 30s and work out what was important to me. And I'm a naturally, and I'm an A-type personality and I go at 110%. So that was a big challenge for me, not being able to do that because I was physically debilitated and mentally struggling. But also I'm not someone who likes to sit at home and mope either. That doesn't serve me. So for me, it was really finding ways where I could get back to a happier self, or get back to finding those, the joy that sport gave me. I had to learn to find it in other parts of life. And I think it's very easy for people to give up or focus on the old. And I think we're all in a very similar stage now, coming off the back of the pandemic, or we're very much still in the pandemic, where I still have a lot of clients that are struggling. They're wanting everything to go back to the way it used to be. But I think
not going to be.
No, it's never going to be. Like most things in life, we're constantly evolving and have to look at new ways to cope, and get out of our comfort zones and challenge ourselves. So once I sort of started taking that kind of mindset, the same sort of mindset I took in sport, once I kind of applied that to, I guess, life, and reassessed my sort of values and goals moving forward as to what was important to me in life. And, having my health back was a big one. It was a lot easier to sort of come out of the trenches, if you will.
Yeah, absolutely. And for people who are going through similar situations where they don't know how to continue with life and persevere per se, what would be your suggestions just to even get going, put that first step in motion?
Well, it's similar to what I said. I think we all have a choice, right? Like we're all the sort of at the risk of sounding corny, the sort of the designers or the architects of our own, health and happiness. So we have to take the helm at some point. It's no one else's responsibility but our own. And we can all, I'm very guilty of putting too much demand on myself as well. So I think, too many pressures and too many responsibilities, and if we demand too much of ourselves physically and mentally, can be a lot to manage. So I think when we're in these sort of times of, like you said, high stress, or whether it be overwhelm or injury or anxiety or mental health or whatever it is we may be struggling with, it's sort of like that ability to see the light at the end of the tunnel and know that you have the ability to come out of it, but you have to do the work.
Yeah.
So at the end of the day, it takes a great deal of work, and I didn't do it all on my own. I was in charge of making the choice to take those steps forward. But I, like any good company, you have a CEO and then you employ a good team around you. So I took charge, and I employed and enlisted a lot of very good professionals around me to try and help me come back. And that was, everyone from my corrective exercise specialists to my physios, to my sports psychologist, to having, being very, very selective with the good humans that I put around me, and just setting better boundaries for myself so that I could prioritize my own health, essentially, and well-being. So I think, that's a really, really big thing for people, is just to take charge, take control again of your own health and well-being, and be a little bit more realistic with your expectations of yourself. I was trying to train a back injury where I couldn't get through 15 minutes of Pilates, but still in my head telling myself I was going to the Olympics. So mentally and physically, I was in two very different places. So I had to learn to meet somewhere in the middle. So, expectation plays a huge role. And they say, too much expectation is the driver of all, setbacks in life or heartaches in life as well. So, but it's realistic. I'm not saying lower your expectations, by no means. It's about having better, realistic expectations of yourself and others. And again, taking control and wanting to be your highest, healthiest, happiest self.
Yeah, absolutely. And making those aligned so you're able to fulfill your goals. Even
Absolutely.
if it takes 10, 15, 20 years.
It does take time, absolutely. But it's, again, once you sort of take control, I think I think, if you say 10, 20 years, that's a lot, but that's maintenance. That's the maintenance work that you're going to do forever and ever and ever. But the real, I think, healing and the real feel good or happiness or inner happiness, whatever you want to call it, comes from initially taking the helm and doing the work.
Yeah, absolutely. May I ask if one of those people that you elected to be a part of that healing process was a therapist?
Well, like I said, a sports psychologist was one of them. So I guess that's the same thing to a point. There's still a form of therapy, and that sports psychologist had a extreme effect on my life, and really, really taught me about the transferable skills from sort of sport back into life, and really helped me find my, I guess, zest again. She was the one that said to me, you've got all this energy, you've got all this excitement that you used to channel into sport. How can we channel that into something else? And that's sort of where Studio PP Premium Performance, my company, was sort of born from, because I realized I needed to put all of that, like I said, energy and enthusiasm, if you will, for life, back into something else.
That's the best. And I think a lot of people, particularly over COVID, and I keep referring back to it, but we realised, and I'm including myself in this, I realised that I needed my own therapist just to unpack the things that weren't serving me. So I guess my question is, for those who are hesitant on making that move, what would you suggest to them?
I mean, I find it so sad, really, that we still have to have this conversation, that it's seen as that it's frowned upon, that we should ask for help. But if you remove the word therapist, you remove the word psychologist, and you call it a coach, if you will, I think you're just employing another coach in your life. And we hire coaches for everything. We hire coaches for our business life. We hire coaches for our sporting life, for, personal trainers. We hire coaches in so many areas of our life to help us. So I don't understand why people, when, like you said, coming off the back of a pandemic where mental health is so prevalent at the moment, and mental illness, where people wouldn't look after their minds, wouldn't look to a professional to help them work out, some of the loops and some of the bad habits, and, just having better awareness of how we think, act, speak and behave is wonderful to get an outside opinion, because otherwise we're not the best judge of character for ourselves sometimes. So I absolutely think having some kind of counsellor, therapist, wellness coach, health coach, psychologist, like I said, is a wonderful investment in self.
Yeah, I think so. And yeah, reading that, not ridicule, but that stigma of, oh, you're seeing a psychologist or a therapist, what's wrong with you? Because those, if we are able to recognize the need and we go before it's too, before when in the worst place that it will take longer to get out of that rut, we actually thrive better and we become our best selves. So, yeah.
I agree. I think we're all in a place of discomfort, or have been for months now, or over the past year, navigating this sort of unprecedented time together. And no one knows. Like I said, there's no rule book. And coming off the back of the pandemic, and all the pandemic has done is just put extra layers of stress and turmoil and uncertainty on top of people's already existing fears and anxieties and stresses. So, we should all be looking to help ourselves with, better lifestyle habits, and definitely employing people to assist us if we're struggling ourselves with the overwhelm, and to manage that stress. Stress management should be at the top of everyone's list, and it shouldn't be frowned upon to ask for help. Yeah. It's wonderful to be able to get someone to help. I think the strongest people are the people who are willing to accept awareness for their own habits and behaviors, and want to address them, and want to make better choices for themselves in life. It's the highest form of self-care.
I agree. Well, thank you for shedding light on that, and hopefully others listening to this might be motivated to seek help if they need it as well. First.
Absolutely. It's never too late to make positive lifestyle sort of changes and decisions for yourself. So if you're struggling, absolutely reach out and ask for help. It's something we all need to learn to do more of in life.
Definitely. And you mentioned how over that period of time you came to realize that Pilates was your form of outlet, and shifting that enthusiasm and I guess that energy into this new business. So tell us about Studio PP and why you chose Pilates.
Yeah, I mean, Pilates was introduced to me at a young age. Before my Olympic career, I was a dancer for 15 years or 16 years. So my old ballet teacher was from the Australian Ballet, and she kind of had always instilled a little bit of undertone of Pilates and core strength into a lot of our training, which I still to this day is a testament to her, to why I went on to be a good athlete. And the opposite of balletic, I went into extreme sports. She was mortified. But she always said to me, do more Pilates, do more Pilates. But it was funny. I went off and did my sporting career. And then it wasn't until I injured myself and had to retire from sport that I rediscovered clinical Pilates. And I really was coming at everything at 100 miles an hour, like I said, coming off the back of this injury. And all I wanted to do was get back in time to compete again. And that's where I struggled, because I was pushing too hard all of the time, and and was so burnt out personally and physically. And that's sort of how I rediscovered Pilates, and had this wonderful teacher that worked with me to help me through my injury. And it was the only sort of physical practice I could find that didn't hurt me throughout my rehab. Everything else was just exacerbating the pain, whereas Pilates I was genuinely feeling better mentally and physically after a session. So I could just feel the benefit, and it was something, even like I said, even if I just did 20 minutes or 30 minutes building back up to a full sort of class, it was amazing. And then it was helping me in sort of other areas of my life as well, because I was finding a bit of an outlet again. So I decided to study it. And so my partner at the time lived overseas. So I sort of thought, that's just a great skill I can take on the road, because we used to live between two countries. And I always thought I was going to go back to sport and be traveling the world and be back on the road competing again. So I was like, I'm going to go study Pilates, because that will help me as an athlete and no matter where I am in the world, stuck in a hotel room, the irony of now being in COVID, and that is our world and our life. But that I was like, I will have that skill set and I'll be able to look after myself. And I was spending a fortune on rehab. But I loved it. So I was like, and it's kind of did a full circle for me, coming off the back of sort of sport being high intensity and sort of functional fitness, but then coming back to sort of that balletic training that I had most of my life, into that clinical training. So it kind of all tied back together, and I loved it, and I was very passionate about it. So I decided that I would go study it. And anyway, I ended up not being able to come back from my injury, spent years using Pilates as part of my rehabilitation, and then also not being able to return to sport, and years of study, which ended up leading me to decide that I should do it myself. And that's where Studio PP was born. So I just started with outdoor fitness and Pilates in the park with, it was called, women's wellness or women's motivational training at the park here in Melbourne. And it just built and built and built and went from being these outdoor motivational women's groups to then getting my first little pop-up Pilates space, to then being this huge studio that then became Studio PP. And since then we've opened 2 other studios down the coast, and thank you, and then opened our corporate health and wellbeing space in the CBD in Melbourne also, and then pivoting during COVID to close one of the 3 spaces to take it online and sort of take the method, spread the method a little wider. So it's amazing. It's been an amazing journey the last sort of 6-7 years with Studio PP.
That's fantastic. And the fact that you didn't know that it was going to happen like this, I think it just emphasizes the idea that you may have, I guess, you know what you wanted to in life, but then it takes you on this journey that ends up in another place altogether. But you also had that in your life before, snowboarding as well, which is kind of beautiful. It's like the circle of life, like you said.
Absolutely. Except the reroute is what I always say, if life sends you in a different direction, accept the reroute, because it's often a good thing. And I don't regret it for a moment. And I love where I've ended up and the direction I've gone in. And I truly believe things happen for a reason in life. So as traumatic as it was at the time, it kind of forced me to stop and recalibrate. And it's no different to what I think we're all going through now with this pandemic. So we can either accept the reroute, which is this life post-COVID, post-pandemic, or during, we're still in it, or be stuck in our ways and be stubborn and don't accept change, which doesn't serve us on a greater level. So I think I was very lucky that I experienced that in my mid-20s. So coming into sort of my mid-30s and dealing with other loss and other change and other levels of uncertainty, I felt a little better equipped, maybe a little bit more resilient than I may have otherwise.
Oh, for sure. And you've trained the likes of Zoe Foster-Blake, Hamish Blake, Michael Klim, Tiffany Hall, plus many corporate figures as well. And obviously they're both male and female. Can you explain the benefits for all? And I'm emphasizing this because Pilates is for both males and females.
It is. Yeah, look, I work with, I'm very blessed and grateful to work with some wonderful high profile people, high achieving individuals, which I think I resonate with and have been very lucky to work with, because I think we're all A-type personalities and we all go at a million miles an hour. So I think in that's why it works well in that corporate space, or like I said, that those high achieving type kind of clients. But I think Pilates is a wonderful practice. I do tend to work with a lot of people. Like I've said, I've done a lot of chronic pain work, but I've also done, professional athletes. I've done, high achievers, CEOs, CFOs, celebrity clientele and Joe Blogs. It doesn't matter. The beautiful thing about Pilates is it suits anyone, and it suits everybody, and it's an ageless practice that is just so wonderful for body and mind. I mean, it works for everybody, as I say, whether you're just starting out, like I said, or whether you're an Olympic athlete, or whether you're a high profile celebrity. It doesn't really matter. I mean, I think everyone knows the physical benefits of Pilates, but having a regular kind of Pilates practice and functional sort of fitness and wellness practice in your life can help you relieve stress. It can help you sleep better. It helps you maintain a better positive mood, improve your overall energy levels and overwhelm. So Pilates, I just think, is one of the best tools that you can have sort of in your life to sort of help you, I guess, excel in other areas.
Yeah, and like they say, if you've got a healthy body, you've also got a healthy mind, and just your outlook on everything just is positive. Not always, but
they're intrinsically, they're absolutely a flow and effect, and they're intrinsically connected, and I think people forget that. So I think a big part of the Pilates method or the Pilates movement is that mind-body connection. Everyone sort of knows it as strengthening your core, or people sort of refer to Pilates as like something you do when you're injured, or that, it really helps you get long and lean. There's all those sort of, Western, clickbaity reasons to do Pilates.
Yeah.
But, I really think, like you said, it's that mind-body connection and connection with self and the physical body, which is where, and then you get all those other things. They're like the icing on the cake, So yes, I'm obviously a massive Pilates devotee, with or without equipment. I just think it's an incredibly powerful tool or practice that you can get very, very hooked on for as a self-care practice, or to help us, I guess, balance our lives, mentally, physically, and emotionally.
Yeah. And it's a good segue, speaking of which, aside from Pilates, what are your forms of self-care?
I mean, it's one of my favorite topics. We could have done the entire podcast on self-care today. But I think the word self-care gets thrown around a little too easily these days, or I guess, or the ability to recharge or refresh, whatever you call it, or self-manage, I think for me is what resonates, a self-management plan. Like I said, we are the manager, we are in charge. So it's, for me personally, it's, and I think for everyone, and this is what I would preach to everyone and all my clients, is that it's improving your relationship with self. That's what self-care really is. It's the way we move, the way we eat, the way we sleep, the people we surround ourselves with. It's the way we care for ourselves, but it's really, really comes down to that relationship with self and that inner dialogue with self. How we care for self, treat self, speak to self, is really, really important. But for me, movement is a big part of my sort of physical self-care. And we store everything in our physical body, from our all our emotions to our stress, our trauma, our heartache, our joy. Everything is stored in us, so we need to move our bodies. We need to regularly move our bodies to get all of those emotions, or regulate all those emotions in the body, and not move just for the aesthetic, reasons that people like to exercise, but for the mental and emotional benefits of daily movement. Also, speaking of mental benefits, I think having some form of meditative practice is really important. For me, I do a lot of breath work, and there's different forms of meditation or moving meditation that works really, really well for me. but I try to have some form of mindful practice in my everyday. And then also sleep has had to become a very big one for me, because I've suffered from burnout and chronic fatigue and sleep disorders in the past. So I really have to manage my sleep and get better quality of sleep. So I might not get as much as I would like, but I'm ensuring that I get a better quality of sleep. And for me, movement, mindset and sleep are sort of have to be my top sort of three, I think, non-negotiables when it comes to self-care.
I love that. And I was going to mention that before, how you have mentioned about sleep not being, I guess, the best in past. So I'm glad that you're working on that and it's helping you be your best self. So, yeah.
Yeah, it's definitely had to become, like I said, it had to become a non-negotiable for me. I struggle with it. I used to be one of those people that thought I could sleep when I was dead and that I could get through everything and anything. But, with chronic pain management, with any kind of chronic illness, be it pain, inflammation, fatigue, or I was getting it in all areas. So it was something that had to give. I had to put a little bit of focus and love and attention back into my sleep hygiene.
Yeah, and I think it's one of those things where you have to do it, otherwise you find out the hard way.
Correct.
You find out the hard way about
when you're standing up falling asleep in the middle of the day. Yes, absolutely.
And for someone like you who's got a really busy lifestyle, because you own all of those studios and then online and everything else to go along with it, you need to prioritize that, otherwise you are going to burn out. So
yeah, I think to keep our cup full, we have to keep filling the cup. So it's I get stretched in a lot of directions, and a lot of that's on my own accord, because I like to take on a lot in my business. I like to overextend myself. I'm not afraid to say that, and but I also like to feel like I'm in control and on top of things. So that means I have to make sacrifices and make significant decisions for my own health and well-being in order to be able to do it all.
Yeah. And following on from that, for those inspired by you, what is your best advice to start?
To start, they're all combined. I was going to say start where, but you know what? It doesn't matter whether you're starting anything, whether it's physical, you've got a physical challenge, mental, emotional, psychological challenge. It's coming back to those non-negotiables, I think. So for me, you refer to it as self-care. I refer to it as self-management or non-negotiables. It's finding those 3 to 5 things that you do for yourself each day or every day, every week, every month that help you operate or feel like you can operate at optimal. So there's those simple things that I mentioned, and they would work for anyone. If we all focused more on our physical self-care, our mental self-care, and getting better sleep, and not looking at our blue screens till the middle of the night, and not overextending ourselves and saying yes to everything in our lives, we'd all feel a lot better. But you have to know what your list of non-negotiables are. So I would start there. And ask yourself, have a really hard conversation with yourself as to if you are implementing them into your life as much as you should be. And then things should start to feel easier once you start to look up, fit your own oxygen mask before you fit others, right? So it all starts with you.
Love that. I actually
get yourself feeling better.
Yeah, and that's perfect, because if our cup's not full, how are we meant to serve others?
Correct. So start treating ourselves like we would a friend and or a family member, and get ourselves right first, and then you'll be in a better place, much better place, and have a much better, I guess, value of self, and feel a lot better in yourself to be able to then take on and help and serve others and the rest of everything else you want to take on in your life.
Thank you for those. That was really great advice. And lastly, I ask all my guests this. What, and you might have answered this already, but what are your top 3 tips for unearthing well-being?
I think they very much come back to my non-negotiables. But in terms of unearthing your own personal wellness practice, I think, like I said, you have to make the choice that that's something you want to do.
Yeah.
You have to, check that you're, I guess, living in accordance with your own personal values and goals, and then work back from there as to what that looks like in order to get there. And that means not getting caught up in the things you can't control around you, doing something every single day that's in line with those values and helping you reach those goals, your personal goals. And like maybe, have the mindset have that resilient mindset of a professional athlete or of an Olympian. Like I'm no different to anyone else. I happen to compete at the pinnacle of sport, but that was one day in my life. So every other day in my life,
You're a bit modest there, but
I'm having to make the exact same choices that the rest of us are. So, but I think having that mindset, that successful mindset, or that mindset to want to get the best out of yourself, is, like I said, and having those honest and healthy conversations and dialogues with yourself is where all the magic really happens.
Yeah, I love that. Thank you so much for your wealth of information that you shared with us all and your story. It's very inspiring, and I think a lot of people will love listening to it and maybe get inspired to actually go out and try Pilates if they haven't already. Maybe Studio PP. Where are those?
Please tell your dad to take up Pilates for his back pain. Pilates. I can't tell you. It's a great place to start.
Absolutely. I am definitely going to be telling him that post-surgery, that's the first place he's going to be going.
Excellent. And I mean, I'm going to start taking my workshops nationally very soon. So if you're not a Victorian or you're not in Melbourne and haven't been able to experience, the PP method, as I call it, my approach to, Pilates and sort of functional fitness, we're going on the road. So hopefully I'll be coming to a town near you and we can experience the joy of Pilates together.
Yay! That is so exciting, and I hope people take this offer up because Steph is amazing.
And thank you so much, Elizabeth.
Oh, you're welcome. And thank you for giving me this hour because I know you're very busy, and I really appreciate it. Thank you so much.
You're so welcome.
Lastly, just quickly, where can we find you?
Oh, if you'd love to stay in touch, you can follow me on Instagram. So it's just at Steffi Prem with a PH. And my website is studiopp.com.au if you want to train with me and or my team online. And if you're more interested in the corporate wellbeing and or the speaking work, you can look me up at stepprem.com.au, I'm pretty sure.
Fantastic. Well, thank you
StephPrem.com.au. That's me.
Yay. Thank you again for coming on. It's much appreciated. And everyone watch Steph's space because she will be coming to you. Take care and have the best day.
Thank you so much, Elizabeth. Thank you. I'll speak to you all soon.
Bye. I hope you found Steph's chat with me as inspiring as I did. In fact, afterwards, I went to one of her workshops, and I'm not exaggerating when I say it was a timely reminder that I needed to regroup, reevaluate, and re-energize. Steph's approach is both nurturing and invigorating. I left the workshop feeling sore, in a good way, and amazing all at once. So I couldn't recommend highly enough to try it for yourself. To ensure Ask Elizabeth and Unearthing Wellbeing continues to grow, please subscribe and rate the podcast. feel free to also share and tag us on your socials. I hope you have a lovely day. Be safe and be kind. Take care.